And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and let me explain to you why I don't play popular commanders in the format, and perhaps I will entice you to do the same. I have covered generally this topic on my channel before in various different videos. I haven't talked about it entirely in one video, bringing all those thoughts together entirely. There's a few different reasons I don't play popular commanders, and no, it's not just because I'm an EDH hipster. There actually is a strategy to it. Now, first of all, what is a popular commander? Well, I guess it is certainly subjective, like most things in Magic are. For me, when I first discovered EDH Rec, one of the things I used that utility for the most was actually avoiding certain things. For example, the commanders I was playing, right? That was a great place for me to find out, once I decided I didn't want to play popular commanders, which commanders were the popular ones so I could avoid them. And it used to be that it was under 100 decks on EDH Rec. That was the line for me. Of course, a lot has changed since then. It is now the most popular format in the entire game of Magic, and 100 decks ain't gonna get you very far. My most popular commander deck right now, funny enough, is Questing Beast. I just looked it up recently. I haven't done this in a long time. Currently 868 decks on EDH Rec. That's a lot more than it was when I first made it, of course. So I guess the line for me is under 1,000. Under 1,000 decks on EDH Rec certainly is a commander that you're probably not gonna see that often, right? I mean, Seton Krosan Protector, anyone seen that one recently? I haven't seen that guy in forever. Apparently he still has 996 decks on EDH Rec. I'm sure most people have never seen this commander, right? So most commanders under 1,000 are going to be a commander you probably don't see very often, unless you got a guy in your play group that is doing it. But why am I doing this? Well, the reason I'm doing this is, first of all, rule number one for me is always in the commander format, don't make yourself a target with regards to deck building and also playing your deck. It's a multiplayer format and you don't want to make yourself a target. Because it's a multiplayer format, everything is essentially exponential. When my opponent has a removal spell in their hand, well, if I got something that's on the table that's really great that needs to be removed, they're going to use it on me, but it's a compounding situation because they're not using that removal spell on my other two opponents. It's even more of a compounding situation because those other two opponents, they might also use their removal on me, right? All those three opponents are using their removal on me if I'm the arch enemy, and they're not using it on each other, right? So it's sort of an exponential effect when you make yourself a target in the commander format. That's why it's so important to avoid doing so. And of course, it starts with your commander. Again, just like I said in my Commander Conundrum video, Commander is so different from every other format. And one of the things I didn't mention in that video is everyone knows what you're doing right out of the gate, right? Your commander is sitting right there on the table. In fact, you're deciding which commander you're going to play before the game even begins. So before anything even happens, before anyone even puts a ley line into play for free before the game starts, everyone knows the color of your deck and they know what your commander is doing. And that's really important. And playing a really popular or powerful commander can make you a target right out of the gate. Now, I say popular or powerful because there's actually some commanders that are really popular that are a little less powerful. The popular and powerful don't necessarily go hand in hand. But if your commander is really powerful, you will certainly become a target right out of the gate, especially if it's a commander that's very much hated, like a Korvold or a Tergrid or something like that. If your commander is also just really popular, it can also make you a target as well, like a Miram Sentinel Worm, which I don't think is a particularly powerful commander, but it has a reputation. People certainly fear it, and it is the third most popular commander in the entire format right now. So if you show up with that deck, you're likely going to be a target right out of the gate. That's a bad strategy to start the game with, in my opinion. And yes, this can even work if you're not playing a really popular commander, right? We have what I call the EDH PTSD effect as well, which is this thing happened to me in the past, which I'm now going to bring forward with me. So if you're playing an unpopular commander, well, doesn't mean no one recognizes it, right? Maybe some guy in that game is like, I've played against that commander before, I know what it can do. Or my buddy's got a deck like that and he just stomped me with it last week. So you're gonna be the target, unfortunately, even though you don't have a popular or powerful commander probably, right? Kentaro the Smiling Cat is a great example of this. Another commander I brought up in a video recently, which is certainly not for most commander players scary or intimidating or would ever make you a target in a Commander game unless you're familiar with the possibilities of what it can do. I would certainly never call this a powerful commander. However, if you've seen it at work, you might be terrified of right out of the gate because you know this guy is likely, and again, that's how you would build this deck typically, likely this guy is going to storm off and kill me with an Aetherflux Reservoir at some point during the game. So even though I'm not playing a popular commander, and it's certainly not a scary one, I might be a target based on very specific circumstances. So I avoid those really popular commanders because I know it's going to give me an advantage not playing them. The other reason why I avoid popular commanders is, as I already brought up, everyone knows what you're doing right out of the gate, right? Everyone sees what commander you're playing. And when I bring my Rain deck or my A Name Is One deck to a table, most people have never even seen that commander before. So what am I doing in my deck? I mean, they can guess, but likely they've never seen what my deck is doing before because they've never seen those commanders before. As you may have heard of before, Magic the Gathering is a combination of chess and poker. And of course, the chess part is pretty self-explanatory. There's a heck of a lot of rules involved in the game. A lot of really complicated interactions, no question about that. The poker part, though, is the really important part that I think a lot of people take for granted in the Commander format. And in fact, Oracle of Mul Daya used to be a Commander staple. I actually don't see it as much anymore, funny enough. That's a card that I never used to play. I hated playing that card. And this is back when I started the Commander format where Oracle of Mul Daya was an absolute auto-include in everyone's Commander decks. It was a very expensive card back then as well. Everyone just thought it was an absolute bomb in Commander, and I didn't like it at all. The main reason why is because you had to reveal the top card of your library. So essentially what that card said is, every card you draw, reveal it to your opponent so they know what you're playing. Don't like it. Don't love it at all. I don't want my opponents knowing what's in my hand. I don't want them knowing what I'm drawing. My opponents not knowing what I'm doing is a really big advantage and a huge strategy in the game of Magic, no matter what format you're playing. As I've said before in my 3 tips for playing the Commander format, I will often just leave 1 blue mana open or 1 white mana open to keep my opponents guessing. I don't actually have an Offer You Can't Refuse in my hand, and I don't actually have Swords to Plowshares in my hand, but I might, and you don't know if I do. The poker part of Magic is very, very important, and I think a lot of people overlook that in the Commander format. And of course, back to the Commander, if I'm playing Lathril Blade of Elves, or if I'm playing Krenko Mob Boss, guess what? Everyone knows exactly what I'm doing in my deck. If I'm playing Gishath Sun's Avatar or Nekusar the Mindrazor, nobody's going to be wondering what I'm doing in my deck. Now, is it possible that you're doing something different? Sure, there is a possibility that you're doing something a little different. In fact, you could be doing something completely different. And if you have a play group and you've explained that to your pod, then maybe you can get away with it. Although I will say that in most cases, a powerful commander is a powerful commander no matter what you're doing. Sometimes you can get lucky, like with Atraxa, the most popular commander in the entire format, of course. I mean, obviously, if I'm sitting across from an Atraxa Praetor's Voice deck, they're doing counters, right? Of course, your commander is proliferating, so obviously they're doing counters. What kind of counters, right? That covers a whole lot of bases. Now, my guess from personal experience would be they're either playing +1/+1 counters, Infect, or Planeswalkers. That's my guess, because that's like 90% of the Atraxa decks I've ever seen. And in fact, I would say the vast majority of the Atraxa decks I've ever seen were Super Friends decks. But they could be doing a lot more, and it's going to keep me guessing a little bit. If your commander is super on the nose, then nobody's going to be guessing. Everyone's going to know exactly what you're doing in your deck before the game even begins, right? It's one of the things I didn't love about Modern. When I left Modern, everybody knew what you were doing in your deck pretty much when you played your first turned land. It was like, here's a Blood Crypt or here's a Hallowed Fountain. And you're like, okay, they're playing these colors. That probably means they're doing this particular deck that's played in the meta. And I probably know what 90% of their deck looks like. Don't love it. In Commander, I like to keep my opponents guessing. And you can do that a lot better if they don't know exactly what you're doing in your deck. There's a lot of commanders where if I see that across the table, okay, well, I know exactly what that person's doing. I could be wrong, for sure. Absolutely I could, but likely I'm going to know what your game plan is, right? If I'm playing against the Muldrotha the Gravetide deck, hello, I'm going to hang on to my Grave Hate when I draw it, right? My Bojuka Bog, maybe I'll save that to play it a little later in the game, right? Because I know exactly what my opponent's going to be doing with their deck. Again, playing against the Teysa Karlov deck, okay, guess I'll hang on to my Stone of Erect instead of possibly sacrificing it to draw a card. I'm just going to let it sit on the table. So no, it's not just a hipster thing. It actually is a big advantage for you in a commander game. I know it's enticing, guys. It's really enticing to play some of these commanders. I'm sure they're really fun to build decks around, especially the more open-ended ones, but it can be a huge disadvantage for you. Don't complain. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to hear any complaining if you show up at a table with your really popular, powerful commander and everyone makes you a target. Just say, hey, Demo warned me. I should have listened to him. That is it for today, though, and thanks for tuning in.